How can you know if God is trustworthy or not? How can you know that you can trust God? I mean, I've heard this phrase before many times, that even though you can't trace his hand, you don't know what's going on in your life, you don't know what God is doing in your life, you can still trust his heart. Well, how do you know you can trust his heart? I know I can trust the heart of Christ because he was risen from the dead. Now, what does that mean? See, everything bounces off of that one truth that's powerfully held up throughout all time, that Jesus Christ rose from the dead. He rose from the dead. Now, how do we know he rose from the dead? Well, all the disciples said we saw him risen from the dead. I was sitting across the table from a guy who was, I didn't know at the time what he was in. He asked me if I could help he and his wife get along with each other more. I was in Washington State. There were about several hundred students at the conference. He said, "Can you help my wife and I get along better?" I said, "Sure. As long as you don't insult her. If you insult her in front of me, I'm coming across the table. You're going to have to take me out." He looked at my neck right here. I was sitting there thinking, why did you look at my neck? So I said, "Hey, man, why'd you look at my neck like that?" I said, "What do you do?" He said, "I'm with Special Forces." I said, hold on, time out. What do you mean Special Forces? I said, "What Special Forces are you in?" He said, "Oh, I'm in Black Ops." I said, "Black Ops? Okay, hold on now. What were you before Black Ops?" He said, "I was a Navy SEAL." All right, so I said, "Explain to me the difference between Navy SEAL training and Black Ops training." He said, "Well, Navy SEAL's kindergarten, Black Ops is university." I said, "No, time out. Navy SEAL is not kindergarten." He said, "Oh, no, don't get me wrong. They broke me physically. Physically, they broke me as a Navy SEAL guy, but they broke me mentally as a Black Ops guy." I said, "Why do they do that to you? Why do they break you mentally?" "Just in case we get captured," he said, "just in case we ever get captured, they don't want us to release information. They want us to be able to be tortured to death without releasing information." I said, "Well, what percentage of Black Ops agents do they believe, or do you believe, will not release information?" He didn't even hesitate. He said 10%. I said, "Time out. 10% of the greatest trained soldiers in the world will not release information when they're being tortured?" He said, "And that's a lie. There's no way. We don't think anybody could ever do it." I said, "You know what you just did? You just proved how trustworthy God is." "What do you mean by that?" He said. I said, "Well, all the disciples died saying we saw Jesus risen from the dead." Jesus claims to be God. He said, "I and the Father are one." He said, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father but through me." He said, "I am the Messiah." Now, how do we know if it's true or not? We know if it's true by a miracle. Well, we can't prove a miracle, but there's one miracle we can come really close to proving by using legal historical methodology, by putting it on trial. How do we know Jesus rose from the dead? Where Bartholomew, one of his disciples, was filleted alive, a common form of torture where they cut off your flesh while you're still living. Thaddeus was shot to death by arrows, another one of the disciples. Matthias was thrown from the pinnacle of the temple and beat to death with clubs. James was beheaded. Matthew was beheaded. Peter came to a cross and said, "I'm not worthy to die like Jesus died," turned the cross upside down, and he died inverted on the cross. All the disciples died saying we saw Jesus risen from the dead. Now, there's no way that these guys would have died for a lie, being tortured to death, because the psychologists today say no one's ever done that before. Well, we have a famous example of this. In the mid-1800s, there were 11 disciples of a guy named Joseph Smith. 8 of the 11 disciples, before they died, said that we made the whole thing up. It was a lie. The other 3 died in a gunfight in Ohio. So I'm just saying, people will not die a torturous death maintaining a lie. So we know Jesus rose from the dead. We know he rose from the dead. If he rose from the dead, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Since he rose from the dead, then we can put our trust in him because we know he proved that he was God by raising from the dead. So all the teachings about Christ, everything he says, they're all trustworthy because he is alive. All right, see you later.